Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be interviewing a wonderful teacher here at Branksome Hall, Mr. Mujib Ahmadiy. Mujib, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Grace. It's an honor to be here.
Mujib, I'm so happy that you agreed to be on the podcast today. I know our students adore you. You're a very popular teacher here at Branksome Hall. So thank you so much for taking the time and spending some of it with us today on the podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Grace. I'm glad to be here. I'm a little nervous because you have guests like Dr. Lisa Damore and Owen, and so yeah, I'm just glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, don't be nervous. I was very nervous when I interviewed Lisa Damore, and I'm nervous interviewing you too. So don't even worry. The whole purpose of this podcast is, when we were doing the one-on-one. So I met one-on-one with all of our colleagues, not almost all so far, and it was incredible, the stories that I heard from people. And you were one of the people that when we had our one-on-one and we were talking and you were telling me your story and your journey of, like, one of the questions I ask is like, how did you get to Branksome? It blew me away. I think your story is so impactful. And I just really thought, wow, our students in our community would love to learn more about you and hear about your background. And before we get into it, though, why don't we take a moment and perhaps you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit, tell our community and our viewers, what do you teach and what's your role here at Branksome?
Yeah, sure. I teach science in grades 10, 9, and 7. This was my second year teaching, and I appreciate you having me here and then listening to our stories. I think that's it's very popular with the other teachers as well. I think it's such a humanizing thing that you're doing to recognize, the service and the work that the teachers are doing here.
Oh, well, that's very generous of you, to be honest. I feel like it's a bit selfish of an endeavor on my part because being new, there's no other way I know how to do this job, unless to speak with people, to learn their stories, and to hear their perspectives about this incredible school. As you can imagine, it's a huge challenge to come into a school and lead when you really don't have a deep history or understanding. And I think it's just so important to do that. So thank you for helping me. The thanks is on my end. So thank you for that. Mujib, you've been here now. This is your second year. And I'm always interested in the perspectives of people. Some people have been here 25, 35 years, and you're coming in with a fresh perspective. What have you seen at Branksome that really excites you about being here?
Yeah, so this is my second year teaching here, and like I am surrounded by like incredibly like dedicated teachers,
Yeah.
brilliant, smart teachers who I'm constantly learning from. My classes initially were like observed by my supervisors and instructional leaders, and one of the like really helpful piece of advice they gave me was to go observe other teachers, and I
Yeah.
was just blown away. Besides the classroom, besides teaching, I really enjoy coaching soccer here. I supervise the Sustainability Council, who do like really good, important work. We do our normal like park cleanups and Earth Week stuff, but there's some exciting stuff coming up. We are
Yeah.
hoping to maybe start a community garden,
Amazing.
collaboration with the other teachers, and hopefully we can get that started as well.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
stuff
love
that
that.
I'm really excited about. Yeah.
There's lots to be excited about at Branksome, and I agree with you. And that's something that I've heard so often. People talk about the caliber of their colleagues and how they were blown away by the incredible talent that we have here at Branksome. So I think we're really lucky.
I agree.
We're really lucky. Mujib, I thought what was really interesting is your mom was a vice principal. I think we would be fast friends. I think we'd have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
I'd love to meet her. I was really curious. You grew up in a household where your mom is a vice principal, education is highly valued. How did that influence you?
Yeah. It's interesting and somewhat strange, I think, because what animates that is like the lack of access to education
Right.
for women in Afghanistan.
Right.
Although my mom, graduated from high school, went into medical school, but because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, because of the wars, she couldn't complete her medical degree. And I think that really impacted her. And it was really important for her that because she couldn't get her medical degree, that we complete our education, me and my
Right.
sisters. And so in some ways there was a lot of pressure, but it motivated me to, even as a kid. I think hearing those stories, there's like a pouch in our house in Afghanistan where like she kept all her like medical papers.
Oh, wow.
And like it was almost like a sacred bag that she would take out once in a while and show us her like A-class marks.
She must have been so proud, and it must have been so hard
For her.
for her.
Yeah. I can, yeah, incredibly hard for her, heartbreaking really. But she's really happy with the education that I received, my brothers and my sisters. And so there's, I guess, some silver lining to her story, the way
Yeah.
she puts it.
Right.
But yeah.
She sounds like an incredible person. On that note, take us back to your childhood in Afghanistan. We talked when you and I were talking in our one-on-one. I was blown away by your stories of your childhood and really how life changed in Afghanistan for you after the Taliban came into power.
So, like, Taliban came to power in Afghanistan twice, from 1996 to 2001, when I was about like 5 years old. Like, that was the first regime when it first came in. So, when I was just starting to go to school, they came into power. And for me, that was like normal. And like the rules that they were implementing, how they closed all the girls' schools. There were no women in public arenas. Um, when you're a child, you don't realize how strange that is. But my mom, of course, was well aware, and it was hard for her to be sort of to be at home, to not be able to work or to study or anything like that. But in 2001, after the events of 9/11, America invaded Afghanistan. And of course, like that's a really complicated story. But for our family, that was kind of like it's like a good thing that America came into Afghanistan, because what that meant was my mom had sort of like the foundational education to go become a teacher, and later the school vice principal. The girls' schools opened, so my two sisters can go to school. One of my sisters, she graduated from high school and later got an economics degree from university. She went on to work for a French organization that was, promoting literacy among women in Afghanistan. But then Taliban came back to power in 2021, and then they closed the girls' schools again. And so here we are.
Here we are. We talked a little bit about your sisters, and you were telling me about what it meant for you to be at a girls' school and to be teaching here at Branksome Hall when you reflected on your sisters and their access to education. And that part of your story, it really impacted me. And I just thought it was, a beautiful way that your philosophy on education has developed. I'd love to hear about that from you. And I know our viewers and listeners would as well.
Yeah, I appreciate being at Branksome Hall in a time when girls' education in Afghanistan, it's banned. So they can be in schools up to grade 6, but after age 12, they can't go to school. And so my sister, with her economics degree, is just at home, can't work. And so when there is like no sort of like avenue to advocate for rights in Afghanistan, for equality, all of that, like what are we supposed to do, right? The rest of us. And I think the best we can do is to sort of like live out those values however way we can. And so for me to be in an all-girls school in Canada, I think it's sort of like my small way of resistance, I guess, for like promoting for equality and justice, and hoping for this situation in Afghanistan to be like a temporary one, so that eventually girls can go back to school. And by the way, like I don't see like what's happening in Afghanistan is 2.5 million school-aged girls can go to school in Afghanistan. And I think that's very strange. It is weird and it should be acknowledged as such. But at the same time to keep perspective and to acknowledge that it doesn't take a lot of backsliding to go from that to like other forms of like sexism. You know, how many women do we see in the corporate boards? You know,
Right.
look at the parliaments around the world.
Yeah.
Women barely make up what 20% of
Mhm.
the parliamentary body. Even in Canada, I think it's more than 20%. And so I see that the two sort of related. I mean, but the sort of fight for justice as a sort of ongoing work in progress.
Well, you've seen it firsthand. You've seen the rights of women exist, and then you've seen them slide back and taken away. What does your family think about you teaching here at Branksome Hall and teaching our girls and students, given everything you've just described? They must really have be amazed by you.
My mom is very happy. She's very proud of this fact
I bet
that
she
I'm in
is.
this school. And I think I notice in her questions that like she's curious and is sort of like living vicariously through me. She's asking me about my days, how I'm teaching.
Oh,
She's very keen on to learn about like the experiments we're doing
right.
in our labs. And she's like, oh, our school would have really benefited from like this approach. We didn't have like laboratories there with this kind of equipment and so on. So yeah, she's very keen and curious and mostly is proud.
And your mom has just come to Canada,
She did, yeah.
right, in December,
Recently in October.
in October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're new to Canada and going through the motions of, you know, culture shock.
Yeah.
That. But it's nice for me to have them be here in Canada with me after so many years.
You've told us a lot about this pretty incredible childhood that you've had. And in a moment, we're going to talk about your journey to Canada. But I want to just pause for a moment and ask you, what do you hope our audience takes away from this part of your story?
I hope that our community sees the fate of my sisters connected to the fate of girls in Canada,
Right.
women in Canada. I really do believe that like this sort of um, march towards justice. I think it's all connected. There's this famous quote from Martin Luther King that really resonates with me, and I sort of like repeat it to myself. Um, Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of like I'm hoping people take away.
Thank you, Mujib. I think it's really powerful. And I know that this part of your story is going to resonate with our community really deeply. And then your journey continued, right?
Yes.
And you came here to Canada. Tell us a little bit, because you've got some interesting teaching background here in Canada as well.
Yeah. So I came to Canada in 2010. Before that, I was an exchange student in America, and I didn't want to go back to Afghanistan. So through like a complicated series of steps, I ended up in Canada. I graduated from high school here, went on to university, and then teacher education at U Ottawa. And then immediately after that, I went to Nunavut for a 2-year teaching assignment. I really enjoyed that and I learned a lot. And my choice of Nunavut was sort of like intentional.
Right.
How I ended up at Branksome was a little bit of like an accident and through like good luck, unfortunately. I'm really happy to be here. But when I was going through teacher education and learning about like the history of Canada and like indigenous history, I really wanted to be there. And there is like severe shortage of teachers in Nunavut and other indigenous communities. The stuff that sort of like really stands out for me from my experience in Nunavut was like some of the initiatives my colleagues and I took. We started a soccer club. We did some fundraisers to bring those kids to tournaments in Iqaluit. We started a yearbook club. After so many years, we produced a yearbook in our school to sort of like instill that pride in our students, and it was so nice to see them. So some of the initiatives that we took, like the yearbook, like starting the soccer club and having students be scouted for Arctic Winter Games, none of which like I did on my own. I had other like really dedicated colleagues who helped me with those projects. But those are sort of like the things that are memorable to me. And I'm hoping to bring some of that sense of initiative here with things like the community garden, which I'm really hoping to get going.
Um, Mujib, was there anything else about your experience in Nunavut? I think it's quite unique. I mean, of course, teachers have that experience, some do, but not many. And is there anything about that experience that shaped your perspective as a teacher of young people that has maybe molded who you are today?
Hmm. Yeah, like here we are in a big school in a big city,
Hmm.
and in Nunavut, I was in a community of 1,000 people. You
Right.
get to know basically everyone, and so from afar it looks like such different communities. But from my like day-to-day teaching experience, I'm just sort of struck by how similar our students are, by like their needs, right, but their need for like dignity and trust and a relationship and an atmosphere of safety where they feel safe to learn and make mistakes. um yeah.
I think that's wonderful to hear, and I understand that because having taught and led in many different cultures and countries, you learn that kids are kids are kids are
Yeah.
kids. Yeah, they're similar in so many ways, and it's incredible to think about that. It's wonderful. So I'm really curious about why you chose Branksome and
Mhm.
what felt right to you about Branksome Hall. What made it a good fit for you? Because
Mhm.
you have such incredible experience. You could have, taught at any school in this great city.
Yeah, to
Why
be honest,
Branksome?
when I first joined Branksome, I felt incredibly underqualified or unqualified, because this is a like an IBU school with a very rigorous curriculum, like incredibly talented staff. Um, but the fact that it's an all-girls school, the fact that I couldn't have planned for it, to be honest, that it's an embodiment of the philosophy of education that I'd like to live by. Um, Given the circumstances in Afghanistan and my background, I feel incredibly fortunate and lucky to be working here.
Um, Mujib, I wonder what if Branksome had existed for your sisters,
Mhm.
if they had been students at Branksome, if they had that opportunity to be at a school like Branksome during their
Mhm.
time growing up in Afghanistan. What do you think that would have meant for them, or how might that have influenced them?
Yeah.
Because it's so dissimilar to perhaps the experience that they ended up having in
Yeah.
school when the Taliban came into power.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It's a powerful question. One that I sort of like see my sisters sort of ask me that in a way that makes me feel guilty.
Right.
Um, that I am here. Like I had the opportunities to get a good education and to work and um, to make mistakes and learn and all of that. And I think every girl deserves that. And the fact that if they had an opportunity like this, like the opportunities like
Hmm.
are boundless, right? They could have
Hmm.
done anything, become a scientist, become a doctor, engineer, whatever they wished. And I think that's sort of like the bare minimum that every girl, every student
Hmm.
deserves real.
Hmm.
And so I'm one that I hope and pray for the girls in Afghanistan.
If you could go back in time and tell yourself, your younger self, one thing, what would it be?
I think this is one of those things where when I was going through training to become a soccer coach, uh, our instructor told us that you actually become a better player when you start coaching. And it is so true. I became a better soccer player once I noticed, like, oh, if I was coaching this, like, what position would I be assuming right now?
Hmm.
I started to notice that I was running more. I was like receiving the ball. And so in my day-to-day interactions, when I'm noticing my students being so afraid of like failure, they want everything to be like to go perfectly the first time. And then I remember that I was like that. And so if I could go back in time, I would just tell myself to embrace failure, to just, I know it feels so big and magnified at the moment, but it's really just part of the learning. And in fact, you learn more when you make mistakes.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Mujib, when you describe your journey from growing up in Afghanistan, coming to Canada, teaching in Nunavut, and then coming here to Toronto,
Yeah.
you have such an energy about you that it's just like, oh yeah, it was smooth, it was easy. And I'm sure that it wasn't at times. I'm sure there were times when it was really hard. You know, you're young, but you've led such a rich life. And when you think about our students and maybe some lessons that they could learn from some of the challenges that I know you may have experienced in that transition,
Yeah.
what is something that advice you would give them?
Yeah. When I was in high school, in grade 12, I was placed in a family, a Mennonite couple, who sort of like guided me through the last year of high school, through like the university application. I've always had people like that, Tom and Lori, who are retired teachers from America, but who also have like a cottage in Canada. Through like just sheer luck, I guess, an accident, I met Tom at the border, and we have been friends with him and his wife ever since. And so they were
Amazing.
yeah. And so I think like the people that you sort of kind of rely on, that always like made it easy. And when we had our first like one-on-one our conversation, I was also sort of like struck by the fact that you were interested in the stories of the teachers who are working here. And I think that's like it's not just good leadership. I think that's very kind and generous, and that sort of it's very humanizing, I think, to the people, to my colleagues who work here. Um, as to what my students can take from that, I guess to to find good people that they can rely on. That generally folks are interested in your story, and if you can just explain yourself.
Those are great takeaways, Mujib. And I think our students in our community have so much to learn from you and so much to learn from the stories of the incredible people here at Branksome Hall. Well, we've come to the closing section, Mujib, the rapid fire question section.
Okay.
So,
Very exciting.
yeah, a little bit of a different tone in this part of the interview, but we are looking to make like a fun playlist on Spotify for Branksome. So the first question is, what's a song that you play on repeat?
Are you sure you want to subject yourself to?
I am sure.
So there's this Bollywood song
Great.
called Jab Dil Mile Mile.
Okay.
And
Jab Dil Mile
just
Mile. We'll
type that video
look it
onto
up.
the podcast. It's a very upbeat song. It's my workout song.
Oh,
I
great.
think people will enjoy that.
What's a guilty pleasure you have, Mujib, that you will never give up?
I'm a huge Liverpool fan.
Of course you
Watching their
are.
games on the weekend. I love that.
That's great. That's great. If you could switch lives with one person for a day, who would it be?
Speaking of Liverpool, their forward, his name is Mohamed Salah, and he's like top goal scorer this season. I would love to switch lives with him for a day.
To be in his soccer cleats for a day.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
When I was going through teacher education,
Uh-huh.
I was partnered with an associate teacher who was like the complete opposite of me.
Uh-huh.
I have a somewhat quieter demeanor, and he was like loud and sort of like very present. If he was
Larger than
you
life.
would know. Yeah. And I thought I had to become that. It felt so hard. But he gave me a really good piece of advice, and he said, you have to be yourself. You have to first find yourself and be yourself. And I think that's really good advice, because I could try to be like him, but it just wouldn't be true.
That is wonderful advice. I believe that deeply as well. It's so important to be authentically who you are.
Yeah.
And the last question is, what do you hope to be remembered for?
Hopefully for service and kindness. Keep it simple.
I'm sure you will be remembered for those things.
Thank you.
Mujib, this was just a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being so open and with everything that you shared. Your journey to Branksome has been just so rich and interesting, and we are all better for hearing about it and learning more. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for being a guest.
Thank you so much, Grace. I
The
appreciate
pleasure's
it.
mine.